Ethan had always dreamed about seeing new worlds, but nothing could prepare him for his first day on Varela. As his shuttle landed in the city's main spaceport, he pressed his face to the window and stared at the strange shapes outside. The buildings were tall and curved, with colors that changed slowly like clouds in the sky. Even the air seemed different, a little thicker and filled with the soft hum of energy coming from somewhere he could not see. He felt a mix of excitement and worry. Everything was so new and different from home. Ethan was not alone. He was part of a small human team sent to Varela for a diplomatic mission. The team leader, Olivia, walked ahead, always calm and sure. There was also a doctor named Ben, and a translator called Mia. They had all trained for weeks, learning about Varelan customs and the strict rules of their society. Still, it was one thing to read about Varela and another to stand on its surface, surrounded by alien life. Strange plants grew along the streets, glowing faintly at the edges, and Varelan people moved gracefully in their colorful clothes. Watching the newcomers with quiet interest, their guide was an older Varelan named Saren. He met them at the spaceport, his skin a pale blue, his eyes dark and thoughtful. He welcomed them and led them through the city. As they walked, Ethan tried to remember every detail. The ground felt soft under his boots, almost like walking on moss. He wondered what it was made of. The air carried a gentle, sweet smell that made him think of spring. The team arrived at a grand hall where the welcoming ceremony would take place. The hall was bright and open, filled with music and the sound of soft voices. Varelans gathered in groups, speaking quietly among themselves. There was a sense of order to everything. No one shouted or rushed. The humans were shown to a small platform at the center of the room. Ethan felt nervous as he looked around. Everyone seemed to be watching them. The ceremony began with speeches from both sides. Olivia spoke about friendship and the hope for peaceful relations. Saren replied, his voice smooth and careful, speaking of the honor of having humans visit their world. There were gifts exchanged, small tokens to show trust and respect. Ethan held his breath as he handed over a small carved bird from Earth. The Varelans admired its simple beauty. After the speeches, the real tradition started. The Varelans explained that each time outsiders visited, there was an ancient ritual. Only one outsider could be invited into the heart of their city to join in a special ceremony. It was a rare honor. No human had ever been chosen before. The Council of Elders watched silently, their eyes sharp. Ethan looked at his teammates and saw they were just as nervous as he was. Suddenly, a young Varelan woman stepped forward from the crowd. She was different from the others, with bright eyes and hair that shimmered like water. Her skin was a soft lavender color, and she moved with a lightness that made her seem almost to float. She walked up to the platform and stopped in front of Ethan. The room fell quiet. Her name was Lyra. She spoke in clear, careful words, making sure the humans could understand. She said she wished to invite one human to enter the sacred city for the ancient ritual. She named Ethan. Her voice did not shake. She did not look at anyone else. The elders whispered among themselves. Olivia looked surprised, and Ben nudged Ethan, as if to make sure he was paying attention. Ethan's heart pounded. He could not understand why she had picked him. He was not the leader. He was not special. He was just an engineer who liked to solve problems and look at machines. Still, something in Lyra's eyes told him she had made her choice for a reason. Maybe she saw something in him that he could not see in himself. Saren explained the rules. Ethan would have to travel with Lyra through the old city, facing tests and learning about Varelan life. It would be hard, but it was also a great chance to build trust. If Ethan said yes, he would be the first human ever allowed into this secret part of their world. He looked at Olivia, who nodded, and at his teammates, who smiled and tried to encourage him. He felt the weight of their hope. Ethan stepped forward and said he would accept Lyra's invitation. The room filled with soft music again, and the elders nodded. Lyra gave him a gentle smile. She held out her hand, palm open. Ethan placed his hand in hers. Her skin was cool and soft, and her grip was strong. Together they left the platform. The crowd parted to let them through. As they walked away, Ethan felt 1,000 eyes on his back. He did not know what would happen next, but he knew he could not turn back. Lyra led him through winding halls, past doors that opened with a touch, and windows that showed gardens filled with strange flowers. She spoke quietly, telling him small things about the city and her people. She said it was brave for a human to accept the invitation. Not everyone would have the courage. Ethan listened and asked questions. He wanted to know everything. Lyra seemed happy to answer. She told him about her childhood, about games she played in the gardens, and about how she had always been curious about the stars. She said most Varellans were careful and slow to trust outsiders, but she wanted to change that. She believed that people could learn from each other, even if they came from faraway worlds. As they walked, Ethan noticed symbols carved into the walls. Lyra explained that they were stories from Varellan history. Each picture told about a challenge, or a time when someone made a brave choice. She pointed to one that showed a Varellan crossing a bridge over a dark river. She said it was about trust, the hardest and most important thing for her people. Ethan thought about how he felt walking with Lyra into the unknown. He understood a little more. The path led them to a quiet garden at the edge of the city. There were pools of clear water and trees with silver leaves. Lyra stopped and let Ethan rest. She sat beside him and watched the sky. The sun was low, casting a soft light over everything. It was peaceful, but Ethan could feel the weight of the challenge. Ahead, he wondered what the tests would be. He wondered if he would be able to earn the trust of people so different from himself. Lyra spoke again, this time about the ritual itself. She said it was not just about tradition, but about opening doors between people. If it went well, it could change things for both humans and Varellans. Ethan listened, trying to imagine what that might mean. He realized that his own life might never be the same. They talked until the sky grew dark and the city lights came on. The city glowed in soft blue and purple, lighting up the shapes of towers and bridges. Lyra led Ethan to a guest house where he would stay the night. She wished him a good rest and promised to return in the morning. As she left, Ethan looked out at the city, thinking about how strange and wonderful it all was. He felt nervous, but also hopeful. Maybe this was his chance to do something important, not just for himself, but for everyone. Ethan lay awake for a long time, thinking about Lyra and her invitation. He remembered the look in her eyes, clear and sure. He thought about the tests to come and the new world waiting for him just beyond the next door. He knew the adventure was only beginning, and he was ready to see where it would take him. Ethan woke up early, the light in his room soft and gentle. He felt both excited and nervous for the day ahead. He thought about the night before, about Lyra and her kind voice, and about the strange city that waited for him. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. When Lyra arrived, she greeted him with a warm smile. She seemed happy to see him, and that made Ethan feel a little more confident. They started their walk into the heart of the city. Lyra led the way, moving quietly through winding paths and archways covered in silver vines. The city seemed even more beautiful in the early light. Birds with long, bright tails sang in the trees, and streams of clear water ran beside the walkways. Ethan tried to remember every sight and sound, knowing this was a place very few humans had ever seen. As they walked, Lyra explained more about her people. She told Ethan that the invitation was a very special honor. The Varellans did not trust outsiders easily, but the council believed that sometimes new friends could bring great changes. She also told him that he would face tests along the way. These were not just physical tests, but tests of the heart and mind. Ethan listened carefully. Wanting to do his best, their first stop was a small square where 3 older Varellans waited. They sat quietly on stone benches, their eyes sharp and curious. Lyra introduced them as members of the council. The oldest, named Ariel, spoke first. He asked Ethan about his life on Earth, about his work and his dreams. Ethan answered honestly, telling them about his family, his job fixing machines, and his wish to understand other worlds. The council listened closely. Ariel smiled and nodded, seeming pleased with his answers. Next, the council asked Ethan to solve a simple problem. They showed him a broken music box. The Varellans loved music, and the box was very old and important to them. Ethan took his time, opening the box and looking at the small pieces inside. He asked Lyra for a thin tool, and she quickly brought one. Working slowly and carefully, Ethan fixed the music box. When he finished, the gentle song played once more, and everyone smiled. The council thanked him for his patience and skill. After the test, Lyra led Ethan to a quiet garden for a short rest. She gave him sweet fruit and cool water. They sat together on a smooth stone bench under a tree with shining leaves. Lyra talked about her own childhood. She said she always wanted to see other worlds and meet people from far away. She confessed she was nervous too, but wanted to make a real connection. Ethan listened and realized they were not so different after all. Their journey continued deeper into the city. The buildings grew taller and the paths more winding. They passed a group of Varellan children playing a game in a round field. The children stopped and stared at Ethan. Lyra waved to them and told Ethan it was rare for young ones to see a human. She asked if he wanted to say hello. Ethan nodded and smiled at the children. At first they were shy, but soon one brave boy walked up and handed Ethan a small ball. Ethan tossed it back gently, and soon they were all laughing together. Lyra looked pleased, and Ethan felt proud. Making friends was not so hard. Soon, Lyra brought Ethan to another test. This time, it was a puzzle of shapes and colors. The puzzle was said to reveal a person's true thoughts and feelings. Lyra explained the rules and watched as Ethan worked. He found the pieces challenging but did his best to stay calm. As he put the last piece in place, the puzzle glowed softly. The council members who had been watching nodded in approval. They said Ethan's answers showed honesty and kindness. As the day went on, Ethan felt himself growing closer to Lyra. She was kind and patient, answering his questions and teaching him about her world. She told him about the city's history, how it was built long ago by her ancestors. She explained the meaning behind some of the statues and symbols they saw. Ethan listened with interest, wanting to remember every detail. Not everyone was happy about Ethan's presence. As they walked, he noticed a group of young Varellans whispering and giving him hard looks. Lyra saw this too and gently took his arm, leading him away. She explained that some Varellans were jealous or afraid of change. They worried that letting a human join their sacred rituals would break old traditions. Ethan understood, but it still made him feel uneasy. He promised himself he would work even harder to earn their trust. Later, the council called Ethan for a special meeting. The room was large and filled with soft blue light. Ariel, the oldest council member, asked Ethan to speak about truth. He wanted to know if Ethan would always be honest, even when it was hard. Ethan remembered a time on Earth when he had made a mistake at work and had to admit it to his boss. He told the council about it, explaining that honesty was not always easy, but it was the right thing to do. The council listened closely and Ariel smiled again. He said that real trust could only grow when people were honest. After the meeting, Lyra took Ethan up a long set of stairs to the highest point in the city. From there, they could see all the way to the shining river that ran beside the city walls. The view was beautiful. Lyra pointed out different landmarks, telling stories about each one. She asked Ethan how he felt about the tests so far. He told her he was tired but happy. He was learning so much and was glad to have her as his guide. Lyra laughed softly and said she was happy too. As the sun began to set, the city lights came on, filling the streets with soft colors. Ethan and Lyra walked back toward his guest house. Along the way, they met Saren, the older guide. Saren told Ethan he had done well that day. He reminded Ethan that every choice he made was important, not just for himself but for the future between their two peoples. Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility, but also a quiet pride. Back at the guest house, Ethan and Lyra sat together on the steps, watching the stars come out. Lyra shared a small piece of bread, a Varellan custom that showed trust and friendship. Ethan accepted, breaking the bread and sharing it with her. They talked for a long time about their dreams and what they hoped would come next. Lyra said she wished for peace and understanding. Ethan agreed, saying he wanted to build bridges, not walls, When it was time to say goodnight, Lyra gave Ethan a small token stone with a symbol carved on it. She said it was a sign of trust. Ethan thanked her, touched by the gesture. As she left, he looked at the stone and felt a sense of hope growing inside him. He knew there would be more tests ahead, but he was ready. He had a friend by his side, and together they could face anything. Ethan lay awake that night, thinking about everything that had happened. He remembered the tests, the smiles, and the small acts of kindness from Lyra and others. He thought about the council's questions and the meaning behind the old stories carved into the city walls. He knew the path would not be easy, but he also knew he would not give up. He wanted to prove that humans and Varellans could trust each other and build something new together. With that thought, he finally closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep, dreaming of new adventures and the promise of tomorrow. Ethan woke up to the sound of soft rain falling outside his window. The drops made quiet music as they touched the glass, and the air in his room felt cool and fresh. He got dressed and looked at the small stone Lyra had given him the night before. Its simple symbol made him feel hopeful. He slipped it into his pocket, ready for another day of learning and discovery. Lyra arrived soon after, smiling in her gentle way. She wore a new cloak, pale blue with silver patterns, and she looked excited. For what was to come? She told Ethan there would be more tests today, but she also wanted to show him some of the city's secrets. Ethan felt nervous but also eager. He had started to trust Lyra, and her friendship made each challenge seem less scary. They walked through quiet streets washed clean by the rain. The city was waking up, with people greeting each other softly and shops opening their doors. Lyra led Ethan to a small garden at the center of a round square. There, she sat down and motioned for Ethan to join her. She looked serious for a moment, and said she wanted to share something important. Lyra talked about her own worries. She said she often felt like she did not belong with the council or with the other young people of Varela. She always wanted to know more about the stars and the worlds beyond, but some people called her foolish. She told Ethan that meeting him had changed her. She now saw that new friendships were possible, and she was glad he had accepted her invitation. Ethan listened closely. He understood her feelings because he had sometimes felt the same way back on Earth. He shared stories from his own life, about trying to fit in and wanting to be more than what people expected. Lyra smiled and said maybe they were more alike than she had thought. After a while, Lyra led Ethan to a large building filled with music and soft light. Inside, the Varellan Council waited. Today's test would be different. Ariel, the oldest council member, explained that the city's energy core had a problem, and it was up to Ethan to help fix it. This core powered much of the city, and if it failed, many people would be in danger. Ethan felt a rush of fear, but he also remembered all the things he had learned as an engineer. He promised to try his best. The Varellan engineers greeted Ethan politely, but he could tell they were unsure about working with a human. There was a language barrier, and many of them spoke quietly among themselves. Lyra stayed by Ethan's side, translating when needed and giving him gentle encouragement. She told the others that Ethan was smart and kind, and she trusted him. They went to the energy core room, a huge space deep under the city. The walls hummed with power, and strange symbols glowed faintly along the floor. The air was filled with the sound of machines running. The head engineer, a tall Varellan named Fen, showed Ethan a large screen filled with numbers and lines. The city's power had been dropping for days, and they could not find the cause. Ethan studied the screen and asked to see the machines up close. He walked around the room looking at wires, pipes, and glowing panels. He took notes and asked questions, sometimes using hand signals when words did not work. He noticed a faint buzzing noise coming from one of the panels. When he opened it, he found a small device that did not belong. Someone had placed it there to block the flow of energy. It looked like sabotage. Ethan showed the device to Lyra and Fen. Fen looked shocked. He called the other engineers over, and soon everyone was talking at once. Lyra helped calm them and explained that Ethan had found something important. Fen thanked Ethan and asked him what to do next. Ethan suggested they carefully remove the device and check the other panels for more problems. As they searched, Ethan and Lyra found two more hidden devices. Each one was small and hard to see, but Ethan's careful eye found them all. Fen and the other engineers worked together to take the devices out and repair the damage. The power levels on the screen began to rise, and soon the core was running smoothly again. The council was called to see what had happened. Aril and the others listened as Fen explained what Ethan had done. The council praised Ethan for his skill and quick thinking. They said he had saved the city from a dangerous problem. Ethan felt proud, but he was also worried. He wondered who would want to hurt the city and why. Lyra stayed with Ethan as the council thanked him. She could see he was troubled. She told him that sometimes change made people afraid, and there were those who did not want humans to become part of their world. Lyra promised to stay by his side no matter what happened. Her words made Ethan feel safe. That afternoon, the council called another meeting. They wanted to know if Ethan would help them find out who had planted the sabotage devices. Ethan agreed. He worked with Fen and Lyra, looking at records and talking to the engineers. After some careful searching, they found clues that led to a small group of Varellans who had always spoken against contact with outsiders. The council questioned these Varellans, and soon the truth came out. The saboteurs wanted to keep the city closed and feared what would happen if humans and Varellans became friends. Instead of punishing them harshly, the council chose to forgive them, asking them to help rebuild what they had almost destroyed. The council said this was the Varellan way, to try for understanding instead of anger. Ethan respected their choice, even though he knew things could have gone badly. He was glad to see forgiveness in action. With the crisis over, Ethan and Lyra walked through the city together. People they passed smiled and greeted them, some even clapping quietly in thanks. Ethan saw that trust was slowly growing. Lyra explained that not everyone would change their mind right away, but every small step mattered. She thanked Ethan for helping her people and for being her friend. As the day ended, Lyra invited Ethan to a quiet place near the river that ran beside the city. They sat together and watched the water flow. Lyra asked Ethan if he missed Earth. Ethan said he did, sometimes, but he was happy to be part of something important here. Lyra said she was glad, and she hoped he would stay for a long time. They talked about the future, about building new bridges between their peoples. Ethan said he wanted to learn even more about Varela. Lyra promised to show him her favorite places and teach him the city's oldest songs. As darkness fell, they stood and walked back to the guest house side by side, feeling closer than ever before. That night, Ethan wrote in his notebook, trying to remember every detail. He wrote about Lyra's kindness, the tests he had faced, and the danger they had stopped together. He wrote about forgiveness and the hope that people could change. He ended his notes by saying he was proud to be called a friend of Varela. He wondered what new tests the next day would bring, but he felt ready, knowing that Lyra would be with him every step of the way. The morning after the sabotage, Ethan woke up feeling both tired and hopeful. The night had been full of strange dreams, visions of shining lights, strange symbols, and the faces of Lyra and the Varellans he had met. When he got up, he found Lyra already waiting for him outside the guest house, her face calm but her eyes bright with excitement. Lyra told Ethan that today would be the most important day so far. The council had decided he could take part in the city's final sacred ritual. It was something very old and very private, and even most Varellans had never seen it. Lyra said it was a ceremony about trust and connection, and she had asked for Ethan to join her. She said the elders wanted to see if a human and a Varellan could share in the ritual as equals. Ethan felt nervous as he followed Lyra to the city's ancient temple. The temple was unlike any other building he had seen, built from dark stone that seemed to glow from inside. Strange, beautiful carvings covered the walls, telling the city's oldest stories. Lyra walked beside him, quiet but steady. She carried a small bundle wrapped in silver cloth, and Ethan wondered what it was for. Inside the temple, the air was cool and filled with the scent of flowers. Soft music played from hidden instruments, and the light came from colored crystals set into the walls. The council was waiting, sitting in a circle in the center of the room. Aril, the oldest council member, stood and welcomed Ethan and Lyra. He explained that the ritual was both a test and a gift. It required two people, one Varellan and one guest, to open their hearts and minds to each other. If they could trust each other completely, they would both see the world through new eyes. Ethan sat down beside Lyra. The council explained the first part of the ceremony. Ethan and Lyra each had to share a memory, something important that shaped who they were. Lyra went first. She told a story about getting lost as a child and how her mother found her by following the sound of her singing. She said that day she learned not to be afraid of new places as long as she had a friend. Then it was Ethan's turn. He remembered a day from his childhood working on an old bike with his father. He talked about making mistakes, learning, and laughing together. It was a simple memory, but it showed the kind of person he was: curious, willing to try, and grateful for help. After the stories, the ritual moved to the second part. Lyra opened her bundle and took out two thin bands made from a shining blue metal. She explained that these were called unity bands, and wearing them meant accepting another's trust. She offered one to Ethan, and he took it, slipping it onto his wrist. Lyra put the other on herself. As soon as the bands closed, they both felt a gentle warmth, like a soft breeze or a friendly hug. The council asked Ethan and Lyra to sit back to back, closing their eyes. The music grew softer. Lyra whispered a short poem in her language, and Ethan repeated it after her. Slowly, he felt his thoughts open up, as if he was sharing his mind with Lyra. Images and feelings passed between them, not in words, but in colors, sounds, and emotions. Ethan saw flashes of Lyra's life, her home, her parents, the feeling of flying above the city in a dream. He felt her hope and her fear, her curiosity and her loneliness. At the same time, he knew she was seeing his memories to Earth, his family, the simple joy of fixing something broken. There were moments of confusion, but also moments of perfect understanding. It was like building a bridge in his mind, letting someone else walk across. When the music stopped, Ethan and Lyra opened their eyes. The council watched them closely, waiting to see what would happen. Ethan felt different, closer to Lyra, and somehow closer to the city itself. He could feel the meaning of the ancient carvings on the wall and the deep connection between the Varellan people and their home. Lyra looked at Ethan with tears in her eyes, but she was smiling. She said she had never felt so close to anyone before. The council stood and spoke together. They said Ethan and Lyra had passed the hardest part of the ritual. Their willingness to share their deepest thoughts had created a new kind of trust. But the ritual was not over yet. There was one final step. Ethan and Lyra would have to face a test together, something that could only be solved if they trusted each other fully. A reel led them to a small room at the back of the temple. Inside was a puzzle made of moving stones and colored lights. Lyra explained that the puzzle was different for every pair who tried it, changing based on their hearts and minds. Ethan looked at the puzzle and saw that some pieces reminded him of things from his own life, while others looked like Lyra's memories. The goal was to bring the two halves together, making a new picture that showed both their stories. Ethan and Lyra worked together, talking softly and listening to each other's ideas. Sometimes they made mistakes, but each time they did, they learned something new. The puzzle glowed brighter each time they worked as a team. After what felt like a long time, the last piece slid into place, and the puzzle shone with a clear, steady light. When they returned to the main hall, the council and other Varellans were waiting. Some of the younger Varellans watched with amazement. The council announced that the ritual was complete, and Ethan and Lyra had done something no one else had ever done. A human and a Varellan had shared the ancient bond. Not everyone was happy. A few members of the council whispered in worry, afraid of what this new connection might mean. Some argued that the ritual should only be for Varellans. But a reel spoke loudly, reminding everyone that their city had survived because it welcomed change and learned from others. He said Ethan and Lyra had proved that trust could be stronger than fear. Lyra and Ethan stood together in the center of the room. The unity bands on their wrists glowed gently. Some Varellans began to clap quietly, and soon the whole room was filled with soft applause. Lyra turned to Ethan and thanked him. She said she was proud to call him her friend and partner. Ethan felt a wave of happiness and relief. That night, there was a small celebration in the city square. People brought food and played music, and the lights shone in all colors. Lyra and Ethan sat together, sharing a plate of sweet fruit. Lyra talked about what might happen next, now that the ritual was finished. She said things would change, maybe. Slowly. Maybe not at all, but she believed the city would remember this day for a long time. Ethan felt the weight of the past days lift off his shoulders. He was glad he had come to Varela, glad he had trusted Lyra and himself. As the stars came out, he promised himself he would not waste this chance. He would do everything he could to help build a new future for both humans and Varelans. When it was time to sleep, Ethan looked at the Unity band on his wrist. He felt stronger, not just because he had passed the test, but because he had made a true friend. He closed his eyes, ready for the next adventure. Ethan woke before dawn. He felt both excitement and worry in his chest. Today would be special. The council had called a gathering in the main square. People said they would celebrate him and Lyra after the sacred ritual, but some still whispered that humans did not belong. Ethan dressed quickly and met Lyra outside her house. She wore a simple dress in soft green, and her hair was tied back with a silver ribbon. She smiled, but her eyes showed she was nervous too. They walked together through empty streets toward the square. The soft light of morning made everything look calm. As they walked, Lyra took Ethan's hand and said she believed people's hearts could change. Ethan nodded. He felt proud to be here with her. When they reached the square, the doors swung open and a crowd filled the space. Varelans of all ages stood in groups, talking quietly. Some held banners with the symbol of unity, the same sign on Ethan's band. There were tables with food and drink, with piles of soft bread and bowls of fruit. Blue water flowed in fountains that sparkled in the early sun. Ariel and the council members sat on a raised platform at one end of the square. Olivia, Ben, and Mia stood nearby, smiling in support. Ethan felt a wave of relief to see his friends. Saren stood behind them, his calm face showing pride. Ariel stood and began to speak. His voice was clear and strong. He told the crowd about the ritual and how Ethan and Lyra had shown true trust. He spoke of the tests, the shared stories, and the puzzle they solved. He said their bond proved that friendship could cross any distance. Even between worlds, some in the crowd cheered, and soft music began to play from instruments hidden around the square. But a few voices stayed quiet. Ethan noticed a group of older Varelans standing off to one side, arms crossed, faces closed. He felt a pang of worry. Lyra squeezed his hand and smiled. She whispered, "We must be patient." Ariel finished his words by offering a gift to Ethan and Lyra, 2 small plants in clay pots with leaves that shone like silver. He said the plants would grow best when cared for together, just like friendships. Lyra accepted her pot and handed Ethan his. He held it carefully, feeling its life pulse in his palms. The crowd then moved forward to greet Ethan and Lyra. People shook their hands, offered blessings, and gave small gifts: flowers, carved stones, sweet fruits. Ethan thanked each with a smile. He felt grateful and proud. Yet he saw some faces turn away. He knew not everyone approved. After the greetings, the council invited everyone to share a meal. Long tables were set with bowls of food, bread, fruit, and a dish of spiced vegetables that smelled sweet. Mia translated for Ethan, explaining each food's meaning. He tasted everything, enjoying new flavors. As they ate, Lyra and Ethan sat together. Olivia sat beside Ethan, and Ben and Mia sat with Lyra. They talked about Earth and Varela, laughing at small misunderstandings. A Varelan woman named Chloe joined them. She had watched Ethan closely and had begun to change her mind. She offered Lyra a kind word about the ceremony and asked Ethan about his home. Ethan told Chloe about Earth's oceans and forests. Chloe smiled and said she wished she could see them someday. Meanwhile, Ethan noticed the older group still across the square. One of them, a stern woman named Serena, watched him with a cold gaze. Lyra followed his eyes and nodded. She stood and walked over to Serena, with Ethan following quietly. Lyra spoke softly, explaining that Ethan had come only to learn and to help. Serena listened but did not smile. She said she feared tradition would be lost. Lyra answered that traditions could grow stronger when shared with new friends. Ethan stepped forward and asked Serena why she feared him. Serena said she worried about the future of her people, that humans might bring harm. Ethan listened carefully. He spoke truthfully about his intentions and his respect for Varellan ways. He said he wanted to learn their customs and share ideas, not to destroy anything. Serena looked at him for a long moment. Then her face softened. She nodded and said she would think on his words. Lyra took Serena's hand and led her back to the table, giving Ethan a proud smile. After lunch, the council announced that Ethan would have a choice. He could return to his people with honor, or he could stay on Varela with Lyra and begin a new life. Ethan's heart pounded. He looked at Olivia and Mia. They smiled and said they would support his choice. He looked at Ben, who gave him a thumbs up. Lyra stepped beside him. She said she wished he would stay because her life felt brighter with him in it. Ethan thought of Earth, his family, his home, but he also thought of Lyra and this world that had welcomed him. He knew both were important. Ethan asked for a moment alone with Lyra. They walked to a quiet corner near a fountain. The water sparkled and the air smelled of flowers. Lyra held Ethan's hands and waited. Ethan thought of the tests he had passed, the dangers they had faced, and the bond they had formed. He thought of the kindness he had received and the friendships he had made. He felt a deep love for Lyra and a desire to help her people. He looked into Lyra's eyes and said he would stay. Lyra smiled and tears filled her eyes. She hugged him. And Ethan felt warm inside. They returned to the crowd. Ariel asked Ethan for his decision. Ethan spoke clearly. He said he wanted to stay on Varela, to learn and to help, and to be by Lyra's side. The crowd fell silent. Then Ariel and the council cheered. Some in the crowd cheered too. Even a few who had doubted began to clap. The celebration turned joyful. Music swelled and people danced in the square. Lyra and Ethan danced together. Laughing, the older Varellans, including Serena, soon joined in. The banners of unity waved in the breeze. As the sun set, lanterns lit up the square in soft blue and silver. Lyra led Ethan to the platform where Ariel spoke again. Ariel said that from this day forward, Ethan would be an honorary Varellan. The unity plants were to be planted in the temple garden, a reminder of trust between worlds. Ethan felt tears in his eyes as he accepted. Afterward, Olivia and the human team said their farewells. They would depart later that night. They promised to tell Earth about Varela's kindness and to welcome more Varellans to visit. Ethan hugged each of them, grateful for their friendship. Mia hugged him last, whispering that she was proud. When the humans left, only a few stars shone in the sky. Ethan stood with Lyra, holding her hand. They watched the shuttle lift off into the night. Lyra pressed his hand and said she was ready for their new life together. Ethan looked at the city he now called home. The glow of its lights, the laughter of people still dancing, and the promise of tomorrow made him smile. He knew challenges would come, but he also knew that trust could overcome any fear. He leaned close to Lyra and whispered, "Let's build our future." Lyra nodded, and they walked together into the night, ready for the next chapter of their story. Morning light filtered through the curtains as Ethan awoke in his new home on Varela. He lay still for a moment, listening to the soft sounds of the city waking beneath him. Today would mark the start of his new life here. He smiled at the memory of last night's celebration and the promise he had made to Lyra. Lyra arrived quietly and sat on the edge of the bed. She brushed a lock of hair back from Ethan's forehead and whispered that breakfast was ready below. Ethan nodded, reached out to hold her hand, and followed her down the stairs. The guest house was filled with the scent of fresh bread and sweet fruit. A simple meal lay on the table: warm rolls, slices of bright fruit, and a warm drink made from Varellan herbs. Olivia and the rest of the human team had left on their shuttle early, saying farewell at dawn. Now Ethan and Lyra ate in peace. They spoke about the plans ahead. Lyra said the council wanted Ethan's help to set up a center for learning, where humans and Varellans could teach each other about their cultures. Ethan felt excitement and awe. He had spent his life fixing machines, not building schools. Yet, He felt ready for this new challenge. He promised to do his best. After breakfast, Ethan and Lyra walked through the city to the temple garden. The unity plants their hands had held were now planted in a special spot. White stones formed a circle around them. Lyra led Ethan to the plants and they knelt together to tend the soil. The plants seemed to glow faintly as they watered them. Lyra said the plants would grow stronger as the friendship between worlds grew stronger. A small group of Varellans watched from a distance. Some looked curious, others doubtful. Ethan saw Serena and Chloe among them. Chloe gave him a friendly nod, but Serena stood with arms crossed, still reserving judgment. Ethan felt a pang of doubt, but reminded himself to be patient. At the garden's edge, a tall Varellan named Rian approached. He was an official from the council, tasked with organizing the new learning center. Rian shook Ethan's hand and spoke in careful words, asking Ethan about his ideas for the center. Ethan explained he wanted a place with books, teaching tools, and space for experiments. He said they could hold language classes, engineering demonstrations, and art workshops. Rian nodded thoughtfully. Ethan and Rian walked back to the city hall, discussing plans along the way. Lyra followed close behind, answering questions and translating. Together, they sketched out a simple layout for the center. A large room with desks and machines, another room for art and music, and a garden courtyard for stories and ceremonies. The council had offered an old building near the river. It needed repairs, but that would give everyone work and a chance to learn from each other. By afternoon, word had spread about the center plans. People gathered outside the old building, curious. Ethan stood on the steps and spoke to the crowd, using simple words and clear gestures. He said humans and Varellans had much to learn from each other. He asked for volunteers to help repair the building and to teach or learn. Some people cheered and a few came forward. Ethan felt hope rising. In his chest, Lyra stood by his side, clapping when helpers stepped up. She whispered that every small action made a difference. Ethan believed her. Over the next days, Ethan worked with Varellan builders, lifting beams, mixing mortar, and learning new techniques. Lyra brought him cool water and snacks, cheering him on. Serena visited once, watched him for a long time, and then nodded before leaving. Ethan took that as a good sign. In the evenings, Ethan and Lyra studied together. Ethan taught Lyra basic math and physics using simple tools. Lyra taught Ethan her language and songs. They laughed at mistakes and celebrated small successes. The council's historians brought scrolls and books for Ethan to read. The translators worked harder to learn human words. One evening, a messenger arrived with news of trouble beyond the city walls. A small group of traders had been attacked by wild creatures. The city guard was stretched thin. The council asked Ethan for advice. He remembered a machine on Earth that used light to scare animals away. He offered to help build a simple device. Lyra and a team of engineers worked through the night, creating a bright lamp that emitted flashing patterns. The next morning, the guard placed it near the trading route. Soon, traders returned safely, and news spread of Ethan's help. The council held another gathering in the square. They praised Ethan's work on the center and the device for safety. They said he had shown once again that humans could bring valuable skills. They granted him an official title, Ambassador of Knowledge. Ethan felt proud and humbled. He thought of his home on Earth and realized he had found a purpose here he never expected. That night, Ethan and Lyra stood on a bridge overlooking the river. The city lights reflected on the water like thousands of stars. Lyra leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder and whispered that she was happy. Ethan promised to stay and build the future they had dreamed of. As they walked home, side by side, Ethan felt a sense of peace. He had come to Varela as a guest invited to a ritual. Now he was a teacher, an ambassador, and a friend. He knew challenges would continue, but with Lyra in his new home, he felt ready for whatever came next. Ethan reached for Lyra's hand and tightened his grip. Together, they walked into the night, ready to face the dawn of a new era for both their worlds.